What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris Infinite, and welcome to 12 beginner tips for Ghostwire Tokyo. In Ghostwire, you're faced with the mysterious disappearance of everyone in Tokyo, save yourself and your little sister. With a dangerous fog blanketing the town, evil ghosts and yokai to bust up, and a masked man to blame for it all, you're set as Akito, aided by a mysterious figure that grants you special yokai-busting abilities. You'll wield your arsenal to track down this masked foe, get to the bottom of things, and save your kid sister in the process. Today, I'm going to show you dudes tips on how to fight this new menacing threat, some tips on how to make and save your money so you'll never need to worry on that end, how to expand your arsenal and ammunition, and so much more. If you dudes like this video, then I have plenty more in store that I can show you here in Ghostwire. Also, subscribe if you don't want to miss a thing here on my channel as I dive into this new game and keep covering the old ones. We're going to start off with combat here with perfect guarding. Perfect guarding is performed by guarding at the exact moment that the enemy is about to attack you, allowing you to perform a guard that fully negates all damage, as well as knocking the enemy back and staggering them a little bit, which gives you further opportunities you can take advantage of. You'll know you've performed a perfect guard when your shield shines with a bright light and you take no damage. As well, the enemy will be knocked back from whatever attack animation they are just performing, which creates a great opportunity, especially against shielded enemies like the umbrella-wielding enemies, to perform a headshot. Ghostwire has a very good, simple, complicated type combat system. Could call it simplicated. Because really, there's so many options for you to take advantage of, but it's all very simple. So you have your guard and your offense, but you're able to proceed through these pretty much instantaneously, as I'm showing here. And if you combine your perfect guards to knock the enemy off and stagger them, and then combine that with your magic and headshots to further stagger them, you can take down even some of the strongest enemies very early on in the game. You have to really keep in mind your defenses as well as your offenses in Ghostwire, because your character doesn't have that much mobility, but we'll be getting into that in a little bit here. Next up, let's talk about charge canceling here in Ghostwire. So you have two types of attacks with each of your magic attacks. A light attack and a strong attack. For the strong attack, you have to charge it up. But sometimes you don't want to be doing that charge attack as you're doing it. In order to cancel that charge attack so you don't waste your ammunition and so you don't leave yourself open, you just want to do a quick melee and that will cancel the charge. And this works the same way for both the bow as well as the kunai and talismans later on in the game. You can charge cancel for a multitude of purposes, either charge canceling to remain a little bit more stealthy, or charge canceling to go into things like perfect blocks in the middle of combat. Now next up, we're going to talk about a very simple and quick 1-2 combo that you could start doing right from the start of the game. And that is very quickly doing a melee at a close range, and then going off and hitting them with a spell secondarily immediately after you've done that melee attack. You can rapidly cast spells, but with melee you have a bit of a cooldown in between your melee strikes. But that does not apply for your magic, so immediately after you're done your melee strike, you can follow up with a magic attack in order to do more damage than just the kind of lesser output of your melee strikes in the start of the game. This doesn't really apply to wind magic so much, but in regards to water and fire magic, you really want to conserve those magic sources, as they do a lot of damage and a lot of crowd control. So you'll want to focus on utilizing your melee attacks like that 1-2 combo I just showed you, as well as utilizing stealth to thin out enemy amounts, so that way you can, again, just conserve your resources for other enemies and continuing the fight.
In their tongue, Dragon Ball.
Earlier with Perfect Guards, you heard me talking about headshots, and headshots in Ghostwire doesn't work like headshots in Call of Duty. It doesn't down the enemy in just one shot, but the idea of headshots is that it gives the enemies greater amounts of stagger, which allows you to knock them down. And later on in the game, you can even unlock more skills to take advantage of the enemies once they're knocked down, but for the time being, it's very good for crowd control, as well as just being able to combo off a very decent amount of damage against enemies that might be a little bit stronger than where you're at. And for the last combat tip for this video, it wouldn't be a proper tips and tricks video of mine if it didn't include a little bit of movement tech. So, once you get your hands on grappling and hovering, you'll probably want to utilize the hover or float ability in combat somehow. And the best method of doing so is hopping up onto a car so that you could gain a little bit of vertical advantage and use that vertical advantage to float around the enemies, either gaining cover really quickly or finding weak spots. You have to get a little bit into Chapter 2 to obtain grappling and floating, but I believe that that's still very much the early stages of the game, and this tip will come in handy right once you pick those abilities up. Okay, so now let's pull away from combat and start focusing on money and experience, the next two very integral things to the Ghostwire experience. Once you've cleared your first Torii gate, you'll start gaining access to the ability to kind of siphon souls from the various souls that are floating around Tokyo. You can gather up these souls and then kind of give them off to some guy who does a thing with them in order to save the people. But the bright side of this is that you get massive amounts of money as well as massive amounts of experience from doing so. And this is by far one of the greatest methods of getting experience and a ton of cash here in the game. You can go around and gather small amounts from lootables as well as objects that glow yellow, and some objects that glow yellow will even offer a rather decent amount of money for breaking them. But you really want to be going for souls for the most part, because this will be offering you both experience and money for your time spent. You're able to increase how much you're able to store in terms of souls as you go along through the game. You'll be able to purchase those upgrades as well as find them around the map as you clear more Torii gates. But when you've gathered up the maximum amount of souls that you can carry, you'll want to head on over to a payphone, make a quick call to a guy named Ed, send those souls off his way, and he sends you the money and experience afterwards. It's kind of a shady deal, but I think we're doing it in good faith here. Once you gain the ability to use your spirit sense, I believe is what it's called, you'll also be able to clear out corruption, which will then grant you large amounts of souls that you can then take off and make more money and more experience with. You'll notice that you get a certain amount of spirits every single time you siphon them off, and this will equate to how much experience and how much money you earn. You'll want to head off for the ones that offer more experience, but really, realistically, just gather up every spirit you find along the way and make a quick phone call in order to profit. As the last method of making money that you might not know about, you can feed the Shiba Inus around town with dog food as well as another type of food that we're going to talk about in a second here. And these doggos will then turn around and dig up a whole bunch of cash for you. And this can be another very lucrative form of farming money. So you've got all of these crazy powers, but you probably want to use them more than you're able to at the current point in time. The easiest way to increase your ammo is by searching around for these little shrines that you can go off to and upgrade your ammo supplies at. Each shrine will have a colored type of lantern, and this will relate to the element that it will increase. You might not notice it with the wind magic, but when it comes to fire magic, buddy, you need those upgrades. You can find these shrines in a couple of different forms that you'll want to keep a lookout for. Both these small statues as well as the wooden shrine that I showed you earlier. The nice thing about Ghostwire is that a lot of these things will pop up on your mini-map as you get close to them. So these won't be super difficult to discover, but if you notice them down the streetway, you probably want to run on over and get that upgrade. When it comes to upgrading your arrow capacity with your bow, that is in your skill tree, and you'll want to head on over to the equipment tab to upgrade your bow's draw speed as well as your quiver capacity. Oh, and you can upgrade how many items you can carry in here as well, which is equally handy. Okay, so now I'm gonna tell you dudes how to be cheap and how to save your money. So when it comes to how you spend your mica or your money in the game, you'll want to go off to corner stores primarily to spend your money, because the convenience stores wind up giving you just a much better price ratio in comparison to things like vending machines. Avoid spending your money at vending machines at pretty much all costs. Unless if we potentially find something that's super useful in a vending machine, the price is just totally not worth it. At corner stores, you'll be able to buy things for a lower price that will heal you a higher amount of health. And then on top of that, you can also restock your arrows at corner stores and also buy more talismans to collect souls in. Also, the cat stores give you cat puns every single time you go in and buy something, and I think that that's worth it. But one of the most ultimate early game healing items that you can get is very early on, before you get the grapple and the float ability, over at the Shinto Gate Shrine area. You can pick up the Taiyaki, which heals you a lot and is very, very cheap. You can find this alley just near the Handicraft Nekomata as you get towards the, which Shinto Gate is this? Come on, let me select. The Shiroyama Shrine, just along the alley here. This next tip goes hand in hand with the last one, because at the Handicraft Nekomata, you're able to sell rare items. And you can tell these rare items out because you get a bit of a cat noise that goes off, as well as them popping up on your mini-map, just like the power upgrades. And with these rare items, you can go off to the Handicraft Nekomata, sell them, and earn a ton of profit for it. Our second last tip is to search the rooftops for lots of souls that give you a lot of money and a lot of experience. Going back around to the primary method of earning experience and money in this game, you can search the rooftops in order to find lots of souls that offer a lot of spirit alongside that will then get you very good rewards when you turn them in off at the payphone. You can also find a fairly decent sum of the Maika glowing yellow lootables on rooftops as well. And so it's a very lucrative approach to earning a lot of money in the game, just going off and scouring the rooftops. Eventually you can unlock a skill to summon your own dude to grapple up to, which greatly improves your mobility in the game, but in the beginning you'll have to look out for the kind of bird guys that float around, because those will be your grapple points. And the last tip is a rather straightforward one, but one you might be curious about as you're freshly starting the game. How do you expand your arsenal? And this happens as you make plot progression through the game, and eventually once you reach Chapter 2 and you're exposed to the open world, you can go off and find your last remaining 2 powers of fire and water, and then you'll unlock talismans later on in the game, again as you progress through the plot. Almost everything in Ghostwire is handed to you in Chapter 2, and from that point on it's just figuring out how to piece it all together and upgrading it from that point. But you can expect to obtain most of your arsenal, if not all of it, by the time you've completed Chapter 2. But there we go, my dudes, 12 beginner tips for Ghostwire Tokyo. And I want to know, if you're playing Ghostwire Tokyo, what do you think of it so far? Hopefully you're enjoying the game. I think it's a very impressive and unique first-person experience here that's come out. And if you haven't picked up the game yet, maybe consider giving it a look-see. But for now, I've been Tenebris. You've been awesome. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.